How do they regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smart.
Well,
and I mean,
either you're a Christian.
Jordan Peterson went to war with 20 atheists, and this was incredible. We got to talk about this. On this channel, I've been vocal about my frustration with Jordan's lack of clarity. It seems a lot of the time he is clearly convinced about Christianity, but he's not convinced enough to defend it or bolster it. In the debate with 20 atheists, he really shined here in many ways. There's some low points as well. We're going to get into the good, bad, and the ugly. Is this the most productive format? No. But I don't care. It's so entertaining. First guy says, the Bible's message can't be understood. There's just too many interpretations.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
we also have a short time here, so I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here, and I'd love if we could...
The core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to give you an example of what's being rejected and its complexity. Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
I said I didn't say the. I said
That is possible, yes.
And this happens multiple times throughout this conversation. He gets really frustrated with them cherry picking specific words or even literally twisting his words in front of his face. As fiery as this was, and as controversial as it was, something that is not controversial is that you should like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really goes a long way towards boosting these videos out to more people. I appreciate it very much.
Tell me everything that you know about the Polynesian deity Lono, L-O-N-O.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not rejecting it. No more than I'm rejecting anything that I don't know anything about.
Do you believe in Lono?
So Jordan Peterson's claim is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So this guy's trying to do this with some false god, some pagan god out there and say, see, Jordan Peterson, what you're saying is actually pretty silly.
Do you believe that he is a deity that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono is a being?
I'll answer that question once you answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is quite simple.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's formulated accurately.
Do you believe that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described. You already insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
I think in order for your argument to be true, in order for it to be true that...
You see, this happens all the time. He asks them a clarifying question or he challenges them with a question and they will refuse to answer. They would just move on. It's tough too. I get a lot of them have speeches prepared, things prepared to say, and they just want to make sure they say that, but it's at the expense of a good conversation. Here he's going to point out that they are more religious than they think.
And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than believers.
That's because they're more religious than they think they are.
Okay.
They're concerned with deep matters, and one of the defining characteristics of someone who's oriented in a religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
Okay.
In fact, it's virtually definitional.
Right, but they also...
Wow. So he points out that this guy's trying to say, atheists seem to know even more about this stuff, and he's saying they're more religious than they think, and again, proving his point, and this is going to be one of the claims that he makes later on.
The idea of God is
Do you think that there's an underlying unity of things?
Could you explain that question?
Well, scientists, for example, believe that science unifies in a comprehensive theory. Do you? Yes? No? Or that there are multiple competing truths? Those are the options. Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
I know that, for example, like in physics, people are looking for like a theory of everything.
And why do you think they're doing that?
It's interesting, it's helpful.
But they also believe that there's an underlying unity to things.
In a sense, yeah, like the material world and time and space are probably governed by universal laws and principles.
Partly that, yes, yes, but that the same thing might extend to a broader domain that would include imagination and value.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Well, I'm trying to define God, the God that I don't think atheists do a very good job of defining. Here's another question for you.
So his point is that there is an underlying unity that science is trying to look towards, and then this atheist gets exposed for being uncomfortable right now with tracing the argument that Jordan is making. This happens a lot. He's trying to trace an argument, then they get uncomfortable, and they keep on trying to say, why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about this?
What do you think guides you in your determination of whether or not what you're saying to me is true?
Can we go back? Can we stay on what we were talking about?
We are.
Okay.
You're just uncomfortable with the question.
No, I feel like you're just kind of throwing different spaghetti at the wall.
I'm not.
Okay.
I asked you a very specific question.
It's going to get fiery here.
I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God. And that goes back to my
Then,
kind of
then
opening
how do we
statement.
specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, or again, it goes back to my example of the
So
motive.
what he's doing is he's creating this moving target, saying there's so many ways to define what God is. And Jordan Peterson is saying, man, if you're going to keep on doing that, how are we going to have a conversation if you keep on saying, well, there's just so many ways to define this? If we can't talk about one God or this kind of God, this version of it, then how are we going to have a conversation?
Defining God as conscience.
Okay, so that's interesting, but then you're kind of expanding the meaning of
No,
God.
I'm not. That's how it's defined in the Old Testament,
Okay,
in
so-
Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So whoever. So
It's
some.
not whoever.
Okay.
Elijah is one of the
Okay.
major
All right.
Old Testament
All right.
prophets.
All
Right?
right.
He's equal in stature to Moses.
Okay.
Right. So it's not arbitrary.
All right. So that.
So he's saying don't disregard Elijah. Then he's going to be charged with being disingenuous just a little bit later.
God.
It's directly relevant. Atheists reject God, but they don't
Right,
understand
but
what they're rejecting.
you're
You
being-
accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old
I
Testament.
think you're being intellectually disingenuous
In what way?
because
I
again,
asked you if you believe that conscience guided
you. You just
you.
asked me a question and then you stopped me from answering it. In this setting, you understand the way I am using the term God and belief.
Not
and
in
then
the
you're-
least. I don't understand how you're using it in the least. That's why I'm trying to define it. My definition of God as conscience is a lot more precise and oriented than your definition of the God that you
But
hypothetically disbelieve in.
it's irrelevant to the fault lines of this debate.
How is it irrelevant?
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheists, God, belief, and not belief,
I
we're
don't
not
care
talking
about common parlance. I'm trying to get to something fundamental.
I think your point is irrelevant to the way that people
Which
tend to use
point?
these words. Your point that there are these polysemous
I didn't
ideas
make that
of God.
point. You did.
I
made a specific
characterized
point
it,
that God
right.
was associated with conscience.
I just feel like you kind of retreat into this semantic fog.
I'm not retreating at all. I'm advancing, sir. You are retreating.
It's clear that he's not being listened to, by the way. This next section might have been my favorite, where he says that morality and purpose are not in science, they're intrinsic, and they are before science. They precede science.
Typically, you're a Neanderthal, you can't eat, you can't hunt, you die, right? But we know that members of the tribe are taking care of him, right? So we know that at some level, early in our evolutionary history, we actually developed altruism. We have examples of chimpanzees who actually have a basic understanding of fairness, right? If
So he's saying altruism is an evolved thing. Morality is evolved.
you give a chimpanzee 2 grapes, right, and his buddy gets 3, right? He actually freaks out, right? But you give both chimps 3 grapes and they're good. We have examples of parrots.
Except for the greedy chimps.
Except for the greedy chimps.
They want 4 grapes.
They want 4 grapes. You know, those
I love that point. He's saying altruism is evolved. And he's saying, hold on. But there's also greedy chimps still completely animalistic chimps. And so let's not just cherry pick and see some examples of altruism and then say, therefore, morality comes from evolution.
do exist, right? But we have similar examples where we do animal tests, right? And
So morality is intrinsic.
I think
So it precedes science.
that actually
right?
a better way to define it would be that social animals, which we are, right,
Yeah.
require some level of morality or
Into what? I'm not disagreeing.
Sure.
Why do they require that?
because it's the only way that social groups can actually survive, right?
That's my point with
Sure.
regards to science. Thank you very much.
Is that
He conceded the debate instantly. Look.
Precisely the point that you just made, that science has to exist within a moral framework that isn't in itself scientific.
how's that not scientific?
Well, because it's not derived from the scientific process, as you just indicated.
Doesn't need to derive
pointing
from the
to-
scientific process.
Well,
It's
hang on.
That's his point here. Morality is not scientifically measurable. You can't. And Matt Dillahunty, I just did a video about this, said we can't even define as secular humanists what well-being is. We can't even define to you what that is. It's not scientifically measurable. So that's proving Jordan's point. It precedes science. It is intrinsic in and of itself, separate and apart from scientific measurement. That's exactly the point, and this guy just conceded it right away. By far the most insufferable person of this debate. I've seen this guy on YouTube. I can't remember his name, but here he's going to try to corner Jordan Peterson and asking him the question, would you lie to Nazis? Would you lie to Nazis? Jordan Peterson's super against lying, and here he's going to say, would you lie to Nazis? And Jordan feels like he's not arguing in good faith, so this is going to be really messy, and Jordan Peterson, when he feels like you're not arguing in good faith, will fight you on every single syllable you throw at him. Check this out.
Lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation
you
to begin
lie?
with. It's a hypothetical, and it's
You
not
can't answer
answerable.
hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like
What?
that because
Did
it's
you eat
far.
today?
Look,
Did you
don't-
See, he doesn't want to engage in the hypothetical because he knows that if he just gives an unqualified, like without qualifiers, conditions in his answer, it's going to be taken and run with. And that's exactly what ends up happening. Check this out.
Look,
Did you
don't
eat
play
it?
games.
I'm not playing games. I'm just
Yes,
asking
you
if you
are.
ate it.
If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just told you
Hypothetical.
I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect.
So, and by the way, this point's going to be proven that he's not arguing in good faith because when you go a little bit further, he's going to imply that Jordan Peterson is not answering because he supports like the Nazis. Check
You're
this
like
out.
not trying to answer this question
What's
for
odd-
some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
Why are
anti-fascist?
you asking that?
I was just
So
asking.
notice that he's not arguing in good faith. It's really disgusting, actually, what he does here with Jordan Peterson. He asks him the question as if that is a question that really needs to be answered by Jordan Peterson. Like that is not a clear thing here. And even more so, the point is proven because Jordan Peterson is going to give a qualified conditional answer. And look how the kid is just going to run with it without all the qualifiers in it.
That would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you lied in that scenario. So
Not
clearly that's
without the
what you see to be true.
context that I put it in.
You were not willing to
I
die for it.
said-
You were not willing
So
to.
Jordan Peterson gives a full context. In this situation, I would lie to get my family out of danger, to get them out of Nazi Germany. And then he goes, oh, so you would lie. He just takes out all the qualifiers that Jordan Peterson gave. Again, proving that he's not arguing in good faith.
Willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation. You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a
How is
corner.
it possible? Is there something contradictory about it?
And right up there with the insufferable award is this guy who's trying to say that Catholics worship Mary for some reason, which is, again, fascinating because it has nothing to do with the thing that Jordan Peterson is saying. It's not really a real argument. He's trying to pin Jordan into this bad corner, knowing that Jordan's wife is Catholic.
Recently, you're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are
How
very
do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smart.
Well,
and I mean,
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smart.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're really quite something. You are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
And good for Jordan Peterson sending him away. What an idiot. Just a lot of these guys clearly just go up there to have some viral moment. And there we go. Here I am covering it on the channel. But just useless, pointless, no reason. That whole interaction, useless, pointless. There was no reason for it. Didn't help at all. Here, according to Jordan Peterson's definition of worship, which is like to attend to devote yourself to something or someone, this guy's going to say, under your definition, Jordan, do I worship my wife? And check this out.
So I am.
And it's partly, well, with regard to your wife, say, so why do you value your wife? You do value your
Yes,
wife.
I love her, so I prioritize and I sacrifice for her.
Right. So that's within the confines of love, let's say.
Sure.
What else does it serve?
What else does what serve?
Your love in your marriage?
I mean, I'm married to my wife because I love her. That's also why I prioritize and sacrifice for her. I certainly wouldn't think I worship her, and I don't think anyone else would make that.
I'm
Are you
trying to
making
make
that
a
claim?
definition.
Okay.
Yeah, that there's a hierarchy of attentional priority, and as you move up it or down it, depending on whether you think about it as a pinnacle or a foundation, you move more towards worship. Right.
So according to Jordan Peterson's definition, he's saying basically the more devotion and attending that you do for someone or something, the more worshiply it becomes. And then ultimately that ends up at like the God level kind of worship.
So even the small things, I'll give you an example. Imagine you go on a date. Well, and imagine that your aim is a long-term relationship like a marriage. Okay, now imagine that your aim is short-term sexual gratification. Your pattern of attention is going to vary during the date, depend on your ultimate end. That's the hierarchy. The way that you attend to your wife is dependent on your ultimate aims, even if you don't know it.
So at what point is it worship? Because it sounds like you're saying
It's
worship is
shame.
almost a spectrum, right? It's not a binary. It's not a.
It's kind of like, that's a good
So
question.
when
It's
is,
like
when is it worship as opposed to just I love my wife?
the closer you get to the top or the bottom, the more it's more like
How
worship.
close to the top? Because I don't think I worship anything. And if you're saying I have to hit a certain threshold for it to be worship, it is possible I don't worship anything then, right?
So now Jordan Peterson is about to ask him, you know what, give me your definition. And this is fascinating, the answer that he gives and how he's instantly going to contradict his own answer for worship.
It's not possible that you don't worship anything.
What do I worship?
Because you wouldn't attend. Well, love.
So you think I
apparently.
worship love?
Do you attend in consequence of love?
I
See,
do.
I'm trying to define something. What do you mean worship? I told you what I meant. What do you mean?
So I mean, something you worship is something that you have a reverential view for in a manner in which you believe it to be above and beyond normal things you like. Like you
So do you
presumably
have that
worship-
attitude towards your wife?
I have that
Do you
attitude.
privilege her compared to other women?
Of course, I privilege her compared to
Okay.
other women, but I don't worship her. Nor does she worship me.
By the definition you just offered,
So
yes.
basically he just said, I, of course, act out my own definition of worship, but I'm not worshiping, right? And again, this guy just defined it. They're not defining it. When people hear worship, they think like worship of God 100%. But Jordan Peterson is saying it's kind of a spectrum. And this is how Catholics use the idea with Mary. They say like worship is not what Mary gets, but she gets veneration. And then there's this word, then there's that word, and there's that word. And people have a disagreement with the spectrum idea of worship. But Jordan Peterson is basically saying in the way devotion is carried out, it is on the worship spectrum, but there is a certain level that only God alone should get. And so this guy says, I'll give you my definition of worship. Then he instantly uses that definition of worship to apply it to his wife, but then says, I'm not worshiping her at all. Now Jordan Peterson is making the argument that atheists accept Christian morality, but they deny the religion's foundational stories. And guess what's going to happen? An atheist is going to come and try to cherry pick evil things in Bible. Evil things in Bible, therefore Bible evil.
I'm Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Yes. So God says that you can own people as property. He says that you can beat them with a rod too. He commands genocide in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, and in Samuel. I mean, they have a baby barbecue in Numbers. Like, is all of this in line with Christian ethics?
No.
So then God doesn't fit within Christian ethics.
So he cherry picks basically a bunch of evil things in Bible or bad things or whatever it might be. And then Jordan Peterson is about to cherry pick back to him and point out the flaw in his reasoning.
Well, the biblical library is a continuing story, and everything written in it has to be contextualized by the entire text. There's 65,000 hyperlinks in the biblical text. And you can take pieces of it out of context and criticize them, and that's what you're doing. But that's a mistake. I think it's an analytic mistake because you're putting the cart before the horse.
I really don't think so. I think
Yeah,
that
no,
if we say that something is Christian ethics, then I think that all of the books essential to Christianity would fit with it, especially if it's like the main character. When we're talking
How
about
do you deal with
God,
the morality of war?
So-
How do you think you should deal with the morality of war?
Sure. Because I feel like the morality, like I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind
So
of,
then he doesn't answer it. You can watch this on your own. He doesn't give an answer for what the morality of war is under a godless system. And that is, again, very revealing. He cherry picks. Jordan Peterson says, well, then you explain this to me. How would this work morally for you? And then he doesn't give an answer for it. Then it gets fiery again. And Jordan Peterson puts him in his place a little bit, and this guy takes it very well.
the Christian
I
God
didn't
isn't
say
like
that.
Christian
I
ethical.
said that the specific statements that you made don't take the context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
Don't put words in my
Okay,
mouth.
Sure, then let's go
Thank
through the
you.
example. Yeah, so, and I apologize. So let's go through the example.
Then he cherry picks again.
In a manner that makes such things much more unlikely.
I totally agree.
We're all saddled with the problem of the catastrophes that got us here, aren't we?
Yeah, but
And-
this
and
one was commanded by God. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's
well-
what differentiates it from anything else, is that this one, it's God
do you
saying,
think that
go
there's
and
ever
do this
such a thing-
atrocity.
Do you think that there's ever such a thing as a righteous war?
I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. It would probably be situational.
So you notice that he says, this is very bad what God did. And he goes, okay, so if it's bad, then under your system, is there ever a context where this can happen? And he goes, maybe. Maybe, yeah, it's situational, potentially. Yeah, and again, he doesn't realize you're basically just conceding this whole point. You're saying it's evil, but then you're also saying there is a situation in which this can happen, and this can be a moral thing to happen. Again, he's instantly conceding this. He's saying there can be a righteous war, but I just don't personally think that this one is. And that's a very weak argument. He needs to see that. Now Jordan is going to make a more full case for morality.
Obviously. And there's a directional morality that emerges across time that has its roots in the Old Testament, for example, with its restrictions against murder specifically, that makes itself manifest in the Christian texts as the insistence on voluntary self-sacrifice as the foundational belief. That's a profoundly anti-violence ethos.
Do you have the belief in your theology?
Well, what do you think?
So Jordan Peterson is saying there is a full case for morality here where it is linear. God is constantly teaching them and growing them and maturing them. He doesn't give them everything at once. And then this guy is going to say, well, if God was perfect, if he was truly perfect, he wouldn't have just piecemealed it out. He would have given it all at once.
Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time, or would a flawless thing say, here's what's good, here's the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time?
Well, we know some of that.
Wait,
Tell
so
the truth. That's one.
that's totally fine, but
No,
presumably...
no. You don't get to skate over
because
that.
this is a straw
That's
man.
totally
It's
fine.
a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So
In
the
what way?
argument
No,
is that God...
wait a sec. You
Well, I'm
said
already- wait a
find
second.
one maxim that's transcendent across situations.
I didn't
and
say any
just
of those
did.
words. I'm not sure what
Okay,
conversation you're
rephrase.
a part of.
Don't be a...
I'm sorry.
Seriously. I mean it. If we're going to have a serious conversation, conduct yourself properly.
Okay.
Okay.
See, he's really getting tired of these guys by the end of the conversation. And he's saying, yeah, engage in good faith. Just engage in the fair conversation. If Jordan Peterson feels like he's not in a fair fight, he will get very fiery and he will get very ornery. This is the last clip. I will have one more clip, but it will be only on Patreon. The link in the description below. You can support the channel for as little as $5 and see the extended version of this in every video that I do. Now, this lady is going to talk about sin and her disbelief in sin and that whole concept, but she's going to find out that what she does believe about good and evil and mistakes is actually very biblical.
What do you mean exactly? Sin as
Like
a part.
the
It's missing
concept
the.
of sin?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's derived from an archery term, and it means to miss the target, right? And so it presumes that there's such a thing as a central target, and that you can miss it in many ways. And the consequence of that will be your life will be ridden with anxiety. Your life will be pointless.
What
People
if
will
I
turn against you.
don't believe in sin at all?
What do you believe in error?
I
Have you
don't.
made any mistakes?
What if I believe that the mistakes that you make, that they're fixable, and so that no sin is finite, and that the
Well, that's a
idea
Christian belief.
of
Then this happens again later on.
Do you believe that you can change?
I do.
Do you believe you can change for the better?
I do.
Do you believe that when you change for the better, you abandon the things you've done in the past that weren't good?
I think that you can.
Okay, then that's very much in keeping with Christian doctrine.
Can you explain to me
Very much in keeping with, she believes in Christianity, in the concept of the morality.
how that's in keeping with Christian
Well,
doctrine?
you believe
if you would go to hell for
okay,
those things?
You believe you can improve.
Yeah.
Right? And you believe that if you improved, you would let go of things that were impeding you. That's a sacrifice. You believe that improvement would be upward, and you believe that you have agency in that. Yeah, those are all Christian presuppositions.
I love it. It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful thing. I love to see that get explained to people, how they are borrowing from the morality of Christianity, but trying to deny the presuppositions of Christianity. This was a fascinating debate, fascinating conversation. It was very entertaining, productive, not that much, but it was very fun to watch. I'm very interested in these. Let me know what you think about this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider supporting on Patreon, liking, subscribing, leaving comments. That kind of stuff really helps me out a lot. There's been weird stuff happening with the channel and views just absolutely tanking. So your involvement when you do watch the videos really goes a long way. I love you all so much. Thank you for your support. God bless you. Lord willing, I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Goodbye.